today we're going to be doing this winter whimsical plate with these little Christmas tree designs using stroke and coat foundations and wax resist, which is really fun. I really like getting to use wax resist on low fire pieces such as this, because when I did my visual arts program, we were working with high fire, and that was what wax resist was for. Basically, like every teacher just made sure that every piece you had was wax resist just on the bottom, specifically so that your glazes didn't run onto the shelf. But you don't run into that issue with these glazes, and it's really fun to get to incorporate that in your design. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And if anyone's painting along today, let me know, like raise your hand or unmute yourself, or just type in the comments and let me know if anyone's painting along. If you have questions along the way, please feel free to ask. We are again going to be doing this winter plate today, but you will also be getting a technique sheet I called it a plethora of presents. So you'll be getting this design as well, so you can teach that in your studio, and it'll be the same kind of technique as what we're doing with the winter trees. So you'll be able to you'll be able to paint like a display if you'd like, a collection of pieces to display in your studio. And obviously I've worked with kind of the same color palette between two, so they're really complementary of each other. So we'll chat a little bit about that too, about how I come up with my designs for Mayco, because I absolutely love the part of that where I get to plan everything and just present it to Mayco before we teach these workshops. So I'm very excited to have you all here today. So thank you for joining. So to get started, I'm using the Mayco oval platter. I've got my plain one right underneath there. What we're going to do before we get started, initially, when you do use wax resist, you need to have some sort of barrier between the plain bisque and the wax resist. So basically what I'm getting at is we're going to be painting 2 good coats of foundations white onto the surface of this platter that we can then put the wax resist on. We basically just don't want to put the wax resist on plain pottery. It just needs a little something to adhere onto. So we're going to get started with that. You only have to do the front. You don't have to do the back of the piece with the white foundations. We can just color that or paint that later with the stroke and coat colors that we've got. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started with a heavy coat of the set foundations. I'm going to shake up my bottle. Sometimes I don't use these as often. And I'm working straight out of the bottle, meaning I'm going to be putting my brush into this bottle and painting right on the plate. If you have a paint your own pottery studio where you have, multiple customers coming in using the same bottle of paint, it's not a bad idea to just pour that out onto a little dish or something, just so that you don't get any cross contamination, because nothing would be more sad than, a dark color getting into your light glaze and the whole bottle being ruined. Little dishes like this, so I'm going to use it later. This would be perfect if you have something, paper plates. I know some studios use tin foil, and then you just chunk it right out. So lots of different ways if you're doing that and you're providing it to a bunch of people. But I'm going to be using a fan brush. I'm going to get my brush nice and full of paint, and I'm just going to start painting. When you hear that kind of, I don't know if you can hear it, but when it starts to drag and you hear like a dry brush sound, that just means you need to get more paint on your brush. So I'm just going to go back and fill it in. It's so satisfying painting big places with this big brush. But I'm just going to go ahead and give that one good coat. I'm usually a soft-handed painter, so I'm going to make sure that I am applying it quite liberally. Just so that I get a good base coat that's going to go underneath the wax resist and then underneath the stroke and coat colors as well. So that one's pretty quick, pretty easy to do. I'm going to let it dry a little bit before I go back and add my second coat. So basically, once you don't see any of that shine on the surface is when you'll know it's good to go ahead with the second coat, sorry. So this time when I painted my first coat, I mostly went like kind of left to right. When I do my second coat, I'm going to focus on doing kind of like top to bottom, just so that I know I've got an even amount of paint all over the surface of that platter. So I'm just going to put this aside just for a moment, just to let that dry. But I'm going to show you different ways that you can get this design onto your plate. So there's 2 different ways that you can do that. This is the design technique sheet that you should have. I printed it off just in black and white so you can figure out where the patterns go, but you are welcome and free to do whatever kind of designs you would like with the wax resist as well as the background color. I've done watercolor, but totally artist choice on that. So Mayco has a wonderful, okay, Krista, you're going to have to remind me of the name because I can never get it right. Carbon paper?
Clay carbon paper. Very good.
Clay carbon paper. There it is. So the thing to remember is there is a front and a back to this to help you get this pattern on. The front being the part where you put your design on top of, and that back part is what actually has the carbon to transfer onto your piece. So you can always test that if you're not sure what's the front. I'm going to just switch up the order here. Just draw a little line. And that did not show through. Let me try again. No, that didn't show through either. Let me try.
Are you trying a piece of bisque?
No, I'm doing it on paper, so that's probably it, isn't it?
Might be.
I'm just going to try the back of this plate.
Yeah. Yeah. And it definitely makes a difference. Like if you're using, it's good that you're showing both ways, because if you're doing it on a piece of pottery that has glaze on it, that glaze has to be completely dry.
Right. So
it will show. And like, and so that's why you're showing the other way too, which is really cool.
Yeah. So here we go. This is the plain bisque. This is what I know it's the front because I did write front on it once upon a time. But if you do that pencil mark there too, that's how you'll know. You'll get that. I can see it. I don't know if you can.
Sometimes it's harder to see on the screen.
Yeah, there is a faint line, so it is there. But that's how you know if you have the front or back. Really roundabout way of saying that, I guess. So that's one technique. That's one way that you're able to get a design transferred onto bisque. So like Krista said, you'll want to make sure that that glaze that you're transferring your design onto is dried. But you can use any sharp pencil, pen, doesn't really matter, but you're just going to trace the design on top of that clay carbon paper, and then on top of your pottery it will transfer. So that's one way you can absolutely do it. I personally have a preferred way because I'm working with an oval platter. So I want to make sure that I'm getting this design like nice and centered and straight. I don't want to have to transfer it on and it like be like this on the platter or something. So my preferred method is just good old tissue paper. This is just a white tissue paper. You could use any light color. Whichever you prefer, just so that it's easy enough to see the design. So this is the sample plate, but obviously it's the same size as the one we're painting on today. So what I like to do is I just go ahead and I trace out the shape of the piece, just so I have an idea of how much space I have to work with to help me center and level things. So that's how I do that. And then I'm just going to take the design template and put it right underneath, which you can see perfectly. And then because I have that pencil line of the design on there, I can also see where it's going to sit on the piece. So that helps to line it up afterwards where I go and transfer it onto the piece. So I can go ahead and trace around that. So I'll do this quickly. And then if anyone's painting along today or where you're painting from, let us know. If you're a paint your own pottery studio owner, or if you are an independent artist and you're learning about the products, just come say hey. I'm just going to trace everything that I see. One kind of shortcut that I will make, like on this tree here, I just do kind of one general line. I'm not going to like follow the inside and outside line of each one. I'm just going to assume that that's where a line goes. And then I'm going to make my brush stroke a little bit wider to kind of look like that thickness, if that makes sense. Just saves me from having to draw a whole bunch of lines.
Such a cute design. I mean, I could see people coming up with all sorts of shapes and styles for these trees, and
that's what I thought. And
yeah, I love it. And I love that the same concept you came up with, you could also do with the gifts, with the presents.
Yeah. And you can use the shape if you want, like the shape of the
Mhm.
trees, but let's say you wanted to have this tree with like a garland design on
Mhm.
it. You could definitely do that. There's so many options for that. That's why I couldn't just design one because I kept coming
Yeah,
up with ideas that worked as well.
that's a fun idea. You could take even the same shape and just do different things with if you didn't want all different trees. But I really love the different trees.
And I mean, this was something that we had discussed, Krista, too, because I feel like there's just so many options of what you could do with like the design of the tree, like the pattern. So like, for example, I did watercolor. But if you had the ability and the time to do this, if you're looking for like a clay camp project or something for kids, you could do, instead of watercolor, you could do like the shaving cream technique. You could do a silk screen. Oh gosh, you could do stamps, you could do stickers, there's just so much that you can do.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be watercolor, it doesn't have to be plain colors. It could be really whatever you would like it to be.
It'd be cool, different textures in each one, like dots in one, flat or something in one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so the other mug piece that I didn't show before, this is the stemless wine tumbler that I also did with the same Christmas tree idea as the plate, just obviously a smaller size. But this was really fun because I got to add kind of like a whole bunch of different painting techniques to it. So this one here, I did like little brush strokes where I would just kind of do like a teardrop, place the brush and pull. That's how I did that one. This one's just got little stripes. It's got purple and blue. It's kind of hard to see in the light here. This one I did as like a watercolor kind of ombre effect. So it goes from darker to lighter with the wax resist on top. That's just kind of a cutie little Christmas tree design. And then that's a watercolor again with some wax resist ornaments. So you really can just go crazy with however you would like to paint it, which is really fun. So now that I have this done, oh no, I didn't trace my, oh look at me, I got distracted. Typical.
Sorry.
That's okay. I just always get ahead of myself. I'm just going to finish up tracing this design, and then I'm going to go and add that second coat of the white foundations to my platter, and then we can get to transferring this design on. So with the wax resist today, maybe Krista can talk a little bit about this when I am painting the second coat, but I have a brush that I typically use just for wax resist. Like I don't really want to be using this brush that I typically paint with for wax resist. So this is kind of like my dedicated wax resist brush because it is a little bit harder on the brush for wax resist. The other thing I'm going to be doing is rather than pouring the wax resist into a paint well or on a tray, I'm just going to do tinfoil so that I can toss it out right after because it's just too much of a hassle to clean out of a paint palette as far as I'm concerned. So this is just a little bit easier to just toss away when you're done with it. But there is, no, Krista, am I mistaken if I'm wrong? I read something or heard something where if you add a little bit of like a brush conditioner or soap or something to your brush before you add wax resist.
Yes. I mean, some people use our wax resist without doing that and it's fine. But I think a best practice, and especially if you're in a studio situation, I would have them what we would call conditioning the brush, where I would put some Dawn or some kind of dish, some kind of soap in my hand and just roll the hairs of that brush around in it and then just kind of bring it to a point and then use it in the wax. And then after that, just rinse it out with soap and water. But I do like you said, keeping that one brush for that. I think that's a great idea.
But you obviously want to make sure that you clean your brush after you use the wax resist. Because I think I had one where I didn't, and it's so stiff. Like it's like a dead brush now. Like I really can't do anything with that. So just remember, especially if you're painting along today, go brush off or just go clean off your brush when you're done with the wax resist. And then I also read something, or maybe it was from a pottery camp, but not to put your brush with the wax resist in your water jar.
Correct, because then that wax can get on your brushes and then you could have a streaky design.
Yes. So there you go.
So just treat it special. Make it feel like a special brush.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I always used to say when I owned my own studio, I used to tell, especially kids, because they pick up a brush and they just kind of would mangle it. And that happens. That's okay. Some brushes were meant for that, but some brushes are, you know, a little bit more sensitive. So I used to say that the bristles on the brush were the brush's hair, and the brush's hairs like to be straight. They don't like to be bent and crooked and
Yeah.
You know. So just gentle with the brush. And I think that was always something that was interesting, is just I think what's fun about painting is everyone that picks up a brush, sometimes if it's their first time, they just assume to go back and forth, but there's different ways you can manipulate the brush to get different kind of end results. So yes, just treat your brushes with care.
That's right. Think about it like a head. I used to in my studio, people would like bang the brushes to get the paint out. I'm like, how would you feel if that was your head? they get it then. Think of it as
I say take care of your brushes, and I'm so guilty of like leaving brushes in the paint pot for too long. So I have some bristles that are just like the bristles are like this.
Yes.
Terrible. Don't do that. So I've got the second coat on this plate. I'm going to let it dry. Then we can transfer our design on. Like I said, we're in the beginning of winter here in Calgary, and it's snowing, so our heat is on. So sometimes if I'm in a pinch or I'm in a rush to get coats done, I put my pieces over the vent to dry, but it's warm air. So I think I remember Teddy saying during a pottery camp that it's best if you do use some sort of fan to help dry your pieces along, to use cold air, because then you get like a skin kind of on top that's dry with your glaze, but underneath it's still wet. So there's an idea. If you have like a class in your studio doing this, you can kind of speed it along if you use cold air to help dry it.
Yeah. Or like some people have those little handheld fans you can get on Amazon. You know, those are nice. Just don't want to do like hair dryers and stuff. They're loud, unless you're doing the batik technique, which we taught in pottery camp, which is the intention is to, bake cracks in the surface. But yeah.
Right. This one we just want nice and dry. So in the meantime, what else can I do? I can just show this little present plate too.
All right.
So this is the same technique as the winter tree the whimsical winter tree or forest, whatever you want to call it. We've got, but this one's just a little bit more, like I've only got one in the middle that's watercolor, and it's a little bit difficult to see. I'm sorry, my light's right above me, so it glares, so I apologize.
Okay.
On finished pieces. But this one does have watercolor, and then I use the wax resist on, some of the finer details. So like the ribbons and the bows that go along. This one I left the white foundation color as like the design on the wrapping paper. Same with this one here, the little polka dots, the moons, little trees. So the one thing that I've learned from using wax resist and from having Krista answer all my questions is it's easier to work with wax resist on larger surface areas. So for example, these big wide trees compared to those skinny little ribbon lines, this is much easier. Just gives more surface area for the glaze that you paint over the wax resist to repel. So that's just a little bit easier to do. The other thing you may have noticed on my design for the Christmas trees, I don't have any of these little stars on the design template. Those are just something that I decided to add in after, because I thought, we could use a little something just to make it a little bit more festive. So that's something you could do today too. You could do little stars. I just drew them on in pencil, and then put the wax resist over them so that the white foundation color shows through. And then I painted the stroke and coat on top. So you could add something a little bit different. You could add lettering if you wanted to, like if you wanted to have like season's greetings or something. These would be really cute as like a cookie plate. I remember a couple of years ago, I saw a really cute design, and it was like the giving plate. And there's like a little poem that goes with it, and how it doesn't have an owner, and every Christmas or something, you take it as a gift, and that's got cookies on it, and then the recipient can then pass it on. So it's just like a traveling pants of cookie plates. I thought that was a really cute idea. So you could definitely do something like that too. Plus the size is just really,
that is really a good size. Yeah.
Plates. So I'm excited if anyone's painting along, or if anyone plans on painting this design afterwards, like definitely post it on Instagram and tag Mayco and I, so we can see it, because I love seeing everyone's individual style that they add to each piece. So I'd love to see what everyone does. So I'm just waiting a little bit more. It's still a little bit wet on there. But when it is done, I'm not going to do it today just because we won't need to, but I will be painting 3 coats of the Stroke and Coat Lavender on the back of the plate, which is one of Mayco's newer Stroke and Coat colors, and I love it. But you could do any of the colors really if you wanted to do a complementary one to the design. I've got Stroke and Coat. These are all Stroke and Coat colors. Blue Dawn, the blues, 501 blues, and then lavender as well. So you could do a different color on the back if you wanted to. You could do the same color. You could just paint it white with the white foundations. Yeah, totally up to you. But it's just for today, I won't paint the back just so that we can keep going on the front so I can show you how to do all the design painting. So close. Nothing like waiting for paint to dry, hey?
It looks like it's drying pretty well.
Yeah, well, that's because we got the heat going, I think.
That's right. That's right.
It's just warm in here.
Well, here we have some trivia we can do. We like to do trivia whenever we do these events, and just for fun, we have a good time with them. And so Lindsay came up with all these awesome questions. And so let's see. How about how many total gifts were given in the 12 days of Christmas? So if you know, you can put it in the chat. How many total gifts? You're all calculating, aren't you?
I think the better statement, Krista, is Lindsay didn't come up with these questions. Lindsay Googled these questions.
Hey, well, that's okay.
I didn't know the answer to these either at first.
Well, usually when we do these trivia things, neither of us know the answers. That's part of the fun. We search for it and then we find the answers.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so the correct answer is 364. Oh, Helene, you're so close. You said 354.
Oh, yeah.
364, or one for every day of the year except Christmas. That's pretty cool.
So it is because I think about the lyrics.
It's 12 days of Christmas, but there's so many lords a leaping and all that. So yes, excellent. Helene, you were the closest without going over. It's like The Price is Right. I like that one. I'm gonna have to save these for family fun. They'll be thrilled.
Yeah, that's something fun to do at Christmas. We started doing we did like Christmas last year in our family. It was almost like it was my boyfriend's sister who planned it, but she almost planned like speed dating. Oh. So when we're eating our Christmas dinner, you could only stay at a table for 20 minutes and then you had to move around so that you got an opportunity to talk to everyone.
Oh, that's fun.
Which was fun, but I'm also a little introverted at times and tired of talking. So
yeah, that's funny. It's hard.
I'd rather do the trivia, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, right. Hard to get your food down that way too. So
yeah. All right. So this plate it's getting there. Certainly getting there. But while I wait for that to finish up, just so I don't smudge anything, when I am nice and ready, I'm going to take this piece, and this is the piece that I trace the shape of our oval platter. So I can now line that up perfectly with the rim of the platter, and then I can get my design on there. Another idea too is if you're doing like a collection of pieces, if you want to work harder and not smarter, you could take the same work smarter, not harder. Oh my gosh, I switched it. Oh, I do that all the time.
Work smarter, not harder. That's right.
Yeah. You can take the same design and you can just flip it around and then you get like almost the same thing, but reverse image. So it just saves you a little bit of time instead of tracing it out again. You can use it more than once. The only thing that becomes a little bit difficult is knowing where you've drawn your lines, especially if there's already black Sharpie lines on there and you're going over it. I've done that before where, I'll miss a couple lines or something because I thought I'd got it, but that was from the time before. So that's where Mayco's clay carbon paper is a little bit easier because it just looks like a blank canvas. But let me tell you, this piece has been used so many times. So definitely there's advantages to using both of them. Just because I'm using an oval plate piece and it's curved and I want to get this design on straight, that's why I'm going with the tissue paper. But if I was using like a square platter or a square plate, or I don't know, if you had a ruler or something, I'm just a little bit pickier about making things straight because I've had some come out not that way. So I like using the tissue paper for that reason. Plus, it's just something that I have a lot of around the house to use. So it's a available material for me.
Oh, I like that you just flipped it over. That's a fun thing too. You could do two different plates.
Yeah, it just makes it easier if if you're doing a class, everyone can just take a turn with this. If it's the same design. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to transfer now. I'm going to trace over these pencil lines with the tissue paper on top of the piece, and I'm going to use a Sharpie for it. You can use the finer Sharpies as well, like the thin ones, but I just find it's easier to rip the tissue paper with those ones because it's so pointed. So I prefer these ones. Plus you just get thicker lines and it's easier to make out. So the thing that I also like about the tissue paper is just because it's a little bit thinner than the carbon paper. It's just, especially because this platter is a little bit curved. Like obviously this isn't going to sit perfectly flat. So it's just a little bit more forgiving in those curved spaces that you can push it down a little bit without it tearing or wrinkling or folding or anything. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to trace on this design now. So I mentioned before too, like on these lines on the curved tree, I didn't do like on the design template. Hold on, let me grab that again. These lines I didn't trace like the inside line and the outside line. I just kind of did one in the middle. And then when I go over it with my brush, I can make it whatever thickness I want. I'm just saving myself some time for tracing all these designs. Sorry. I just read someone's question, so I got distracted again. So I just did 2 coats of the white foundations, but I applied it quite heavily. So I made sure that my fan brush was really full of that paint before I was done or before I applied it. Just make sure your brush is loaded up and keep an ear out for that kind of scratchy sound when you know your brush is running out of paint and you need to go back and apply some more. Because we're also going to be doing 3 coats of the lavender on top of this as well. So we'll have plenty of coats and it'll be nice and covered so you won't have to clear glaze it either.
And if you're teaching this in a studio environment and you're worried about your customers not getting enough, just have them do 3 coats. Because a lot of people, some people don't load their brushes as much. And I learned that once I started at Mayco, how to really load it. A soft fan like Lindsay was using is really the best to get good coverage on that big solid area like that.
Yeah, makes it go by faster.
Yeah, for sure.
I just find too, when you have like a group of people in painting, if they're like chatting and they forget too. They don't really keep track.
For sure. And then they ask you, how many coats have you done of this white paint? And good luck.
I'm an expert, but I'm not that good.
That's right.
I think it was someone had the idea. I mean, this is a little bit different, but maybe you could make your own adaptation of it. But on the Christmas trees, the ones that have the holes for the little lights, someone put a pipe cleaner on one side in like a different color, and they'd start at that side, paint around and turn the tree. So they knew when they had done a coat all the way around. And I thought that was really
a great idea.
Yeah. Because that's one where you really don't know. And then that's one where you use the brown red looking paint for the green, and every person thinks you've given them the wrong color.
Right. Yeah. Using the elements. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then you can use that same pipe cleaner to clean out the holes, clean out any glaze.
Yeah. So smart. Work harder, not smarter.
Right.
I've done that so many times today. Oh my gosh. The snow is throwing and the cold is throwing my brain off.
Yeah, right.
All right.
It happens.
Yep. All right. So, and before I'm going to peel this off, I'm just going to put my hand on part of it just so that if I can check I've got it all drawn out. I haven't forgotten anything in case I need to line it up again. All right, we're good to go. So there we go. So you can sort of see my faint lines. They look a little bit better to me in person, but you can see them there on the camera. I'm sorry about the shadow too. So what's fun about the wax resist too is you can kind of work in layers with it, which I think is fun. So for example, which one did I do on? I think I did it on. Yeah, so this present, for example, I did the wax resist where the white trees were. I painted, then I did the wax resist, I painted the blue background, and then I painted the ribbon and that little kind of branch. And then I went and I put wax resist over all of that to then do the blue background. So it's kind of cool. You can work in layers. When I put the wax resist down for these little tree designs and painted over it with the blue, when I then went and painted the wax resist on top of this entire present, the wax resist kind of repelled on top of the wax resist. So it's not like you can put wax resist on top of wax resist. It'll crawl off of it, but you can still kind of work in layers, if that makes sense. I hope I explained that well. So for these trees, I'm going to be doing kind of a watercolor technique with, these are all stroke and coat colors. Again, SC30 Blue Dawn, SC31 the blues, SC58 501 blues, and then SC103 lavender. So the lavender is the color that I'm going to be using for the background as well. So one thing that I'll make a note of to you is that, like, on these watercolor plates, I did use that lavender color in it, but I didn't use it too much and I didn't apply it close to the edge because I didn't want to have the background color kind of blur into that design. So just if you're using the lavender with the watercolor, just focus on kind of using it more in the center, because I just don't want to make it look like, you know, the border's bleeding into the tree or the tree's bleeding out into the border. So I'm going to focus mainly on using the blue colors and then a little accent of the purple. So if you want, again, like I said, I did the little stars afterwards. So this would be the time to do those now. You could sketch those out with pencil or a water-based marker, and then we can go and add the wax resist on top of that. Or if you want to add lettering, you can do that as well. But now would be the time while you've got that plain white background. So for this one too, I also did this one with the wax resist. So before I go and do the watercolor on that far right tree, I'm going to add the wax resist first, just so I can get those kind of, I don't know what that is, swirly garland, we'll call them. I'm going to wax resist those lines out first before I do the watercolor, because I want the watercolor to repel around those wax resist lines. So I'm just going to get my wax resist and I'm going to pour it on a little piece of tin foil so that I can just throw this out when I'm done with it. So the one thing that I noticed when I was working on this project, and Krista can chat a little bit more about it because I had questions about that for her, is wax resist is not a forever, it's not a forever lasting wax resist, I guess is what I'm getting at. So I have a bottle that's hardened and it cannot be reconstituted. Is that the
Right,
word?
right. Yeah. It's good to buy small bottles, because if you don't use a lot of it, it can get dried out. Like I have a big pint, but I use it pretty regularly. And when I use a lot. But if you're not using it all the time, or even in your studio, I think it's nice to just have small bottles. Because if you don't get the lid on tight enough, or if, it's a plastic bottle, things can happen. So I like the smaller size for that.
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, I think I had that bottle from the first pottery camp I did, which was in 2020. So it's like 3 years old.
I mean, it takes a while. It's not like it'll dry up in a week. So
No, it takes a while for sure. So I'm just doing the wax resist. I've got like a really fine kind of liner brush that I'm using. This is my dedicated wax resist brush. So I'm just going over those kind of swirly So I'll show you wax resist lines. They're not super thick in width, but I am applying a liberal amount of wax resist to it so that it's not gonna not repel the watercolor paint. If that makes
Deb was
sense.
asking if the wax resist freezes, does it separate? I'm not sure about that, Deb, but I can find out.
I mean, I will say that where I keep my wax resist, I've got it in behind me in a wheelie cart in front of a window with fluctuating temperatures. So maybe that is what happened. Maybe it would have been better in my basement or something.
Yeah, I don't know about it separating. I just think it might get hard. I don't know. I've never heard of it separating, but anything could happen, I suppose.
Well,
I've never really heard about it freezing. I guess it certainly could happen because I know glazes can freeze.
Yeah.
And glazes are fine after they freeze, once they thaw out. I don't have that problem where I am. Especially not today.
Yeah, no, I'm jealous of that.
You can do two. Somebody asked if it's a good idea to do 2 coats of wax resist. You can, with this wax resist, you don't have to do it very heavily at all. 1 coat is fine, but I find that I also go over it just a second time to make sure I'm covered. Because if you are a light applicator of wax, I always want to make sure that I have enough on there. So Deb said she's had it separate. So why? I don't know, Deb. I'll find out and I'll email you tomorrow.
I think the reason I sometimes go over my lines is what you said, Chris, does. I just want to make sure that I've kind of covered everything.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because when I paint things, I always do more than 1 coat. So I think it's just habit also.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I just think, or I just want to make sure it's covered. Exactly. I mean, I do that a lot.
Yeah. So while I've got the wax resist, I'll just show you kind of how I do the stars. I just kind of sketch out those little cute stars, those little sketchy ones. That's really the only kind of star I know how to draw. So I just do a couple of those kind of around the plate, and then I just go in and I paint that all in with the wax resist so that I have those white stars showing through underneath the stroke and coat color that I'm going to be doing for my background. So that's how I did that. Just so you can see how I did that. I just picked a few kind of spots up in the top here. I kind of thought was a little open. So that's where I went and I added a couple little stars that I put the wax resist on. So that's optional if you would like to have that. But I just had my wax resist brush out at the time. So I thought I would do it then. So the wax resist also doesn't take very long to dry. I kind of just check it with my finger first. If you lift your finger up and you have the wax resist on your finger, maybe give it a little bit more time, but it's typically pretty quick. So in the meantime, I'm going to go over and work on this left tree. So I'm going to get some paint poured into my palette, and you don't need a lot because we are going to be doing the watercolor. So you don't need a whole lot of paint, and I've got a water jar beside me. So I'll do, that's Stroke and Coat 31, the blues that I just poured. This is 501 blues, which is SC 58. I've now got SC 30, which is Blue Dawn. And SC 103 Lavender. So those are the colors that I'm going to be using for the watercolor design on these trees. So what's nice is I've obviously transferred on our design where you have those tree outlines. But because I'm going to be doing 3 coats of lavender on top of it, if I go outside of the lines, it's okay. That's just, those lines are more so there for me to know where to put the wax resist so that I get those sharp edges for the shape of the tree. So if you go outside those lines a little bit, it's okay. And you might anyways, because the edge of this platter is a little bit curved, so it might just run down. So that is all okay if that happens. So my paint is a little bit, or sorry, my water is a little bit white because I cleaned my span brush, but I'm okay with that. I mean, it works with the colors. It might tint them a tiny bit, but there's really not that much in there. But it, you know, if you had paint with, or a water jar with black paint kind of used in it, I would change out the water. But for this, I'm okay with it. So sometimes when I do my watercolor, I just start by painting an area of the piece with water. It just gives this paint that you're going to apply at first a little bit more room to move. I also like to kind of work and dip my brush back and forth between the water and between the paint. So I'm going to dip it in the water jar, and then I'm going to dip it in my paint. And then I just kind of like to blob it on. I'll lift this up a little bit closer to the screen for you to see. So you can kind of see like it's starting to do its watercolor thing. If I want to soften out these edges, I just get some more water on my brush and I kind of dab around it. And then I let the paint flow where the water takes it. So you can see like kind of right in the middle there, I have a more concentrated amount of that blue paint. And I like that. So I'm going to leave that part. And then now I'm going to just kind of go and do that same kind of blobbing technique. I'm not brushing it like you would with painting. I'm kind of just patting it with my brush lightly. So I'm going to get, this is the darkest blue, which is 501 blues. I love this color when it's fired. It's just so beautiful. And I'm just going to kind of do the same thing. I'm going to kind of overlap it with this other blue so they kind of look like they blend into each other. And I can also kind of take this color elsewhere. You can work with larger sections at a time too. If you want to do like a bigger area of the dark blue and then go and add layer of colors. The other option is if you use, I'll show you the difference, a bigger brush, you're going to get kind of looser blobs, if that makes sense, obviously, because it's a bigger brush. But this one also this brush holds a lot more water in it. So it really, really thins down the paint. So it's not going to be as opaque. It's definitely going to be more translucent. But I'm just dabbing the brush. It's kind of equal. I dip it in the water, I dip it in the paint, dip it in the water, dip it in the paint. And I'm keeping it close to the line of the trees and as a guide, but if I go over it, it's okay. And I'm also just making sure too, like I said, I'm going to keep that lavender color kind of towards the middle of the tree, just so that it's not right on the edge and looks confusing with the background color that we'll add later.
I think it'd be really fun, like you do such nice collections, to have like a piece that has the watercolor all over and then the trees are solid. That could be fun too. Or one giant tree, or one giant watercolor tree. That'd be fun too.
Yeah, absolutely. I apologize about that shadow. There we go. That's better.
That's good.
There. So I'm just going to continue on. I'm going to add some watercolor. So again, I'm doing watercolor on all three of these trees, but the stemless wine tumbler that I did a few different techniques. So you could definitely do that on your trees as well. I really like this look with the kind of the brush flicks. I really like that. I got some stripes there. And the other one that I really liked is the watercolor ombre. So maybe we can do that in the middle one and I can show you how I do that as well. So I'm just going to fill in around this tree. And then it's nice because I'm doing the watercolor technique, I'm thinning down my paint, which means I'm still able to see those Sharpie lines underneath for the design that we added for this tree, which is kind of like those arched swirls. So I'm still able to see that underneath the paint, so I'll know where to apply those after. I just really like doing watercolor too. I think it's very relaxing.
Yeah, I think so too. It's just easy to get lost in it.
I mean, I like watercolor painting on ceramics. I'm not very good at actual watercolor. But my great
relaxing, I think.
Yes, that's true. My great aunt was a beautiful watercolor painter, but I got some artistic talent from her, but not watercolor. All right, so that's pretty much filled in. I'm going to let that dry. On my sample plate that I did, the star on top of that tree, I did in the darkest color, which is 501 blues. So I did 3 coats of that. I just used a fine kind of line brush to do that. So I can show you that real quickly. But that one I do 3 coats of, and then I'm going to end up putting wax resist over pretty much everything afterwards. So it will stay dark blue, and then that lavender background color will go all the way around it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's nice when you're working with this because you can see, like, sometimes it's hard to see on the screen, but when people are glazing it, you can see where the wax will keep it inside that area.
Mm-hmm.
It'll repel it.
Yeah, and it's fun to watch it repel too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So for this middle one, I said I'll show you how I do this technique, which is kind of just like a brush flick or a brush pull, brush stroke look. I'll show you that because this is a larger scale. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take, let me just clean my brush off before I show you. I'm going to use a round brush for this. So one with a rounded tip, and I'm going to use that and do those pulls. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the lightest color first, which in this case is the SC 103 lavender. So I'm going to do that color first. So I'm going to do lighter colors at the back and then build up darker colors on top of it. So this is SC lavender. So I'm just going to fill up my brush with that paint color. And then all I do is I just place the brush down and then pull up. So it kind of just looks like what you think of when you think of a brush stroke, I guess. And you kind of get that pull away where it leaves those lines at the end. So you're going to have like a variation of that color. So you're going to have kind of a more opaque look right here where the brush initially pushes down and pushes out more paint from the brush. And then when you pull up, it loosens. So it'll be a little bit like translucent almost there. So I really like the look of that one. It's kind of fun and festive, and it makes it look a little bit like branches on the tree, but obviously this is a purple tree. But I really like the idea of using purple for Christmas or winter, because that's exactly it. It's more of a winter color to me than Christmas, which, you know, traditionally you think red and green. But I thought this was a really pretty kind of winter idea, so you could use it longer. I'm a big fan of doing things where, you know, you get the most use out of it. So if I could use it for the winter season versus over the holidays, I'm a big fan of that.
It's also a very trendy color right now. Lavender is so popular.
I am in my purple era.
Hence lavender. So I came out with it because we're so on it.
Yeah, I just have purple everywhere right now. I love it. So I'm going to let that light lavender, those brush strokes dry, and then I'm going to move on to the next color on top of that, which is SC30 Blue Dawn. So I'm going to do basically the same thing, but I might just work those brush strokes in to fill in those spaces a little bit. So I'm just going to let that dry a little bit more, and then I'll go ahead and add that. So what I'll do in the meantime is I'm just going to go and add some watercolor to our third tree, which is the one on the right. So same thing, I'm going to just load up my brush with water and paint. I might just do a quick coat just so that the paint has somewhere to move. Plus I think I've found that when you add a little bit of water on top of the wax resist, it just helps the paint repel a little bit easier. So I'm just doing that kind of dabbing technique again to add the watercolor kind of blobs.
I love that you wet it first, just like watercolor paper. I think it's so smart.
Yeah, I think it just makes it move a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Because otherwise it would just soak right in, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing too. If you were doing watercolor like this, like it's much easier to do on a painted surface versus like a plain bisque surface. Because when it's plain bisque, it's so porous that it'll just dry up so fast that you won't really be able to push paint around anywhere. Like it'll just dry and then it's there. So I kind of like having a background color there, like this foundation's white color, so that it's got a little bit to move on and it doesn't dry as fast. So there's some parts, again, because of this curved piece, it kind of like curves down. And so you can see right in here, this is kind of like the flat part where the paint is like, it's not moving anywhere, but that's where it's kind of pooling. So I'm just going to take my brush and just kind of push it off of it, just so you can see that wax resist through.
Very cool.
It's kind of like sciencey too, and cool and fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we always used to do watercolor with school groups. And I think that was really fun because they'd come in and they'd be so confused because they'd be like, why is there no paint in my tray?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a really fun way to teach a different way of painting, especially to kids that may not have tried it before. So it's really fun to do. And it's just nice for adults too, because it takes a little bit less focus. Like you can just relax and kind of space out. And the paint kind of, when you have that much water and paint, they kind of swirl together and do the work for you too, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's right. You can't really duplicate it, which is cool too.
Yeah, exactly. They're all unique. So hopefully you never have to replicate like the exact same thing. But for a standpoint of participants, everyone's is different. Oh, yeah. My dog just came home for a walk, so she's all feisty from the cold weather.
Oh, I bet.
She just got a groom yesterday too, and we have this really funny habit every year where she gets a groom either right before a snowfall or right after.
Mm-hmm.
So I never want to get her too short, so she's cold. All right, so those two trees are done now. If I want to, because some of my colors here have muddled a little bit much, like there isn't anything kind of visually interesting. So I might just take the darkest color, which is SC501, and just add some kind of blobbies through there, just to add a little bit more interest to it.
We started early.
We started early?
No, we didn't.
Oh, okay.
We're right on time.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know if that was you talking.
No. 7 Eastern.
Okay, so this is one that I'm going to go back to now. I'm going to do the SC30 Blue Dawn, and I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the purple brush stroke, the lavender brush strokes, but I'm just going to do it with the Blue Dawn and kind of just fill in those gaps until it's filled in. And I'm going to do it the same process. I'm going to do it again with the SC31, the blues, and SC58, 501 blues. Those colors, those names are very similar. I get
Get the whole blue theme going.
Nice and wintry. So the other one that was really fun that we talked about, I didn't add it, but because this one I did a light color, but the dark colors, like this 501 blues on this present plate, is the Stardust. Looks really pretty on top of dark colors, which is like a sparkly glaze.
It's one of our spectacular glazes. It's great.
Fun for Christmas too, I would think.
Oh yeah. It definitely looks good on dark colors.
Mm-hmm. And it's always just really fun. Like when we had little kids come in the studio, you know, to say, do you want to add like sparkle to your piece? They'd be like, yes. A lot of adults would say that too, actually, but
right, of course.
Kids were an easier sell. There we go. So I'm just going to let that Blue Dawn color dry. I'm going to go and paint the star on top of this tree though, which is the SC31, the blues. So I'm going to paint that one in, and I'm just going to use a kind of liner brush to do that. And maybe while we wait for it to dry, I'll just add some more stars too with the wax resist. You have some more trivia questions, Krista?
I do.
Perfect.
Okay. Here's a random one. Where was the first Yule log cake created? Bonus points if you get the correct century. Someone says Germany. Who else? Any other questions? Any other answers? The question is, where was the first Yule log cake created? All right, no other answers. The answer is France. According to Lindsay's research, it says France. The Christmas cake is believed to have originated in the country in the 19th century. But thank you for playing. Let's ask another question. Let's see. I'm going to mark that one off so I don't ask it twice. What was the year of the first Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting ceremony? What year was the first Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting ceremony in New York? Okay, we have 1924 as a guess. What else? Okay, just throw it out there. You never know. Throw it out there. Another good guess. Oh, okay. Oh, we're getting lots of good guesses. Anybody else? All right. Oh, got some more coming. So our guesses right now are 1924, 1905, 1956, 1933, 1935, 1931. Okay, anybody else? 1788. Ooh, wow.
Ooh.
You think Rockefeller Plaza was then built? 1788? Okay.
All right, the answer is, while the very first tree in Rockefeller Center was in 1931, there wasn't an official tree lighting ceremony until 1933. So, very good, Helene. Nicely done.
You remember that story of the Rockefeller tree a couple of years ago where that little tiny owl like stowed away in it?
Oh, yes, that's right.
It was so cute. Poor little owl was like, what the heck is happening?
I know, I'm like, what? This is way further away from home than I wanted to be. Oh, here's one more. Okay. Mistletoe. True or false? Mistletoe berries are edible. You can eat them. Is that true, or can you not eat them? True or false? I love trivia. This is so much fun.
Yeah.
Okay, the answer is false. Eating any part of the mistletoe plant is extremely dangerous. So don't eat mistletoe berries, people.
No, there's like a couple poisonous plants around the holidays. Isn't poinsettia? Isn't that one poisonous too? Especially for pets, I think.
Yeah, that could be right. I think you're probably right about that. Not edible. Good question. Somebody said. Let's see. What else did they say? When do they bloom? I don't know when they bloom, Joanne. Mistletoe? I feel like when my granddad would go out in the woods in the winter or in the fall, they would be up. And it's way up in the tree, and you have to either climb up in there or shoot it down, which is what he did.
I love that.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever kind of stopped to think about where mistletoe grows.
Yeah, it's always way up high.
That.
Okay, so in Washington or Oregon, maybe I think that means spring. In March it blooms. That was a good question. It was a good throwback question. Right back at us. I did not get it right.
I don't know if I've ever really seen real mistletoe.
Yeah, we used to always have granddads around. Not anymore.
We used to, well, not used to, we did it one time, but my grandpa used to make, and this is where like my grandpa was 94 when he passed away. So when he was like my age, it was a long time ago. So when he was telling me about it, I had no idea what he was talking about. But he used to make teasel trees. And teasels are kind of like thistles, but and he used to collect them which for one thing is hard because they're really spiky.
Mhm.
And he would kind of stack them up in like layers to make a tree. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you're probably imagining it the same way I did, which is I had no clue what he was talking about. But it was really cool because he ended up actually going out around his house, finding some teasels. And then we had a Christmas craft night with my grandpa, which was really funny because he was an engineer. So he did things painfully slow and methodically correct. But he made a teasel tree, and I'm pretty sure my dad still has it. But when I had my studio, I had the teasel tree in it, and I had it, high up on a shelf so that someone didn't run into it. But my grandpa was saying, "Oh, you should do a class with these. People would love it." And I was like, "No, Grandpa, I can't have people like stabbing themselves with teasels."
That's sweet. I just looked up teasels. They're really fun looking.
They are, yeah. They're just like really, really big thistles.
Yeah, how cool is that?
But he said he used to make those like every year. So when he was younger, so it was just cool to watch him do it.
Oh, let's see. They have it here in Central Florida. Marlene said that. Oh, that's cool.
Central Florida is it mistletoe?
Teasels. I mean,
teasels.
yeah, teasels, I think you're talking about. Yeah, interesting.
Florida is not a place I would think to see that.
Mm-mm.
All right, I'm just letting my pieces or my watercolor trees dry a little bit more. I've got some wax resist on all the stars that I just went and added in the background. This is still drying, but I might go ahead and just add another layer of the brush strokes. So I'm using the SC31, the blues color, to do this. And I'm just filling in those spots that don't already have color. So if you don't fill like the entire surface of it, like you might get some of the white showing through, that's okay. So don't worry about filling like every tiny little gap, I guess.
Yeah, because remember, we're going to have the purple background. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, wow. Deb Ward says they have 5 trees that need to be cut down because they have so much mistletoe and it grows in the oaks. Oh, neat. This is such an educational class.
I love it.
You come to Mayco, you learn more than about products. You learn about.
See, I don't think I knew that. Oh, 5 trees that need to be cut down because they are full of mistletoe.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a mistletoe tree.
Oh,
I don't think I ever gave any thought to how mistletoe grew.
Yeah, it just grows on other things.
All right, so I'll let that one dry. I just have one more coat to do with the brushstroke tree on this one, which is the darkest color, which is SC58. The color is 501 blues. There we go. So once all of that's dry enough too, then I'm going to go in with the wax resist. And now this might be a spot where, so far all the wax resist that I have been using has been kind of fine line. So maybe if you have a thicker one, because now I'm going to be going over afterwards, I'm going to be going over like the whole tree itself and then the little stars. So if you have a bigger brush that you're willing to dedicate to the wax resist, you could do that too. Otherwise, it's just going to take you a really long time to paint all those trees with such a tiny brush. So I just realized too, I have to draw the lines on that tree. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do that in the darkest color, which is SC58 501 blues. I keep getting tongue tied on that one.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to use a liner brush for that. And I can still see those kind of swoopy lines on there. So I'm just going to use my liner brush to add those on. So this is where it's fun. Like I'm doing the swoopy lines, but you could do polka dots. You could do more little stars. You could do, oh my gosh, you could do kind of garland. You could do little candy cane shapes. That'd be really cute.
Oh yeah, I think that'd be fun.
Go. So I just think it's fun, like whatever the color palette is that you decide to go with. Like I wanted to go with kind of a wintry, bluey, purple color scheme, but if you changed it to green and red, obviously you've got a more traditional kind of colored piece. Or if you wanted it to be a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? You could do like a pink kind of scheme. So you have like a trendy, oh my gosh, what did we do last year with the trees? What did we call that? Bright and fun?
Oh yes, that's right.
It's kind of, and it was another whimsical one, but like really fun, like corals and teals look really fun together.
Yeah, kind of vintage colors. Yeah.
Oh, Deb said if I want more contrast, how about 2-2 tango? Oh yes,
Great idea.
Absolutely, go for it.
Love that.
Because 2-2 tango it's a little bit orangey, is that right? A little orangey red.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would look really good.
Can you use wax resist over crystal glazes and elements?
Ooh,
yeah, I don't see why not. Just make sure your glaze is dry underneath before you put it on. And always, well, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but anytime you have color on top of wax, you have to clean it off. And Lindsay, I'm sure, will be talking about that. So I'll let her talk about that when the time comes.
Yeah, that would be cool though with jungle gems.
Yeah, that'd be neat. You have to make sure you apply it very well since it has that texture to it. I use it with stoneware glazes a lot. And you know, the cool thing about stoneware bisque is it doesn't have to have glaze on it to be vitrified, to be sealed. So you could always do like a name or something on there. I do a logo and then I put wax resist over it and just leave it and then it burns off. So I just make sure that I clean any glaze off the wax resist. And that works out nicely.
Yeah, and I think that's what's cool about using the wax resist on pieces that aren't stoneware, because that was the only way I knew how to use it before.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things. I think it's always just good to test it out, see how it works.
Yep, that's the one thing I've come to learn is you just have to try it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. A lot of times people ask us something, does it work? Well, just test it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So there's my kind of curvy lines on that tree done. And then I'm just going to add the darkest color to finish up this tree here with the SC50. No, see, I did again. SC58 501 blues. I'm sorry.
All right. It's a lot of things that go together, especially when you have a color that has a name in it, like a number in it.
A name and a number, yeah. That throws me off. I think this one looks I think this kind of painting technique looks so cute on a tree because it does look like the branches almost.
Yeah, it definitely gives it texture. I think people could have a really fun time coming up with different patterns and things to do inside there. And I like on your watercolor on the left, how you have those solid stripes in there to give it some contrast too.
Just add a little something to it.
Yeah.
All right. I think that tree's done.
Nice.
All right, so the trees are done. I just need to let them dry a little bit more before I add the wax resist on top of everything. But the one thing that I'm going to do is just check over the lines that I had with the wax resist on these trees, because there's some spots where there's still a little tiny bit of paint pooled. So using a sponge with water it certainly helps to remove it. But here's what I've learned. It definitely helps if you have a sponge that you're able to cut up so that you have a smaller sponge, because I actually ran into the issue when I was doing this mug here, is just to make sure that you got all of the wax resist. Well, let me just move that plate out of the way. But when I was doing these trees, I painted them, I added the wax resist on top, but sometimes it just doesn't run off just in case it gets pulled out. So I was using a sponge, but the problem that I ran into was when I was using the sponge, I also kind of took off some of the paint on the side. So it just was a little bit streaky in spots. So I added more of that blue, but that's just something to pay attention to. So the other thing that you could do is just the end, like the end of the brush that I'm using, my wax resist is beveled. So you could almost use that just to kind of like scrape the paint off, just to make sure that there's nothing on there. If you do have wax or paint left on top of your wax resist, it will fire. So you can kind of see on this purple plate here, there is some paint of that 501 blues that I did as the background that's left on top, but I like it in this circumstance. Like, I think it kind of adds to the design. It makes it look like it's part of the wrapping paper. So I don't mind it, but it is just something to pay note to.
Yeah. And if you haven't ever used wax resist before, anything like Lindsay was saying, anything that's on top of the wax, any paint or glaze that's on top of the wax, when it's fired, that wax goes away, it burns off, and anything on top will just fall down onto the color. So that's why she has that cool effect on that present. And so you can use that to your advantage in a design. Like, we've done it a lot in like snowy scenes. It's really fun, but it just gives it a different look. So you can use a Q-tip, you can use the end of the brush, you can use a wet brush, anything, like she said, a sponge also. So there's lots of different ways to get that color off. I have never done this with the end of a brush, but I think that's such a good idea.
I have to say, I think I learned this from when I had my studio. I think I saw a kid doing it and I was like, what are you doing? I think he thought that he was in trouble, but I was like, no, like, that's really smart. I've never seen anyone do that before.
It's a great idea.
So I think that's an excellent idea. Plus, it's already on your brush, so you've already got that tool there. So
right. I love that.
But I just think with the design that we're doing too, we're not looking for perfection of, I like when the paint settles on top of the wax resist and fires off, because it kind of does that cool effect. So it just adds to it. It's all part of it.
Right. Depends on what you're going for sure.
Exactly. So I just have to let it dry up a little bit more. There's still a few spots. So maybe, Krista, do you have some trivia questions while we wait for that? Okay.
Do.
Okay, I'll be right back too while you do that.
Okay. All right, here's a different one. When did it become tradition to leave milk and cookies out for Santa on Christmas Eve? Yeah, I got y'all thinking. Okay. When did it become tradition to leave milk and cookies out for Santa on Christmas Eve? Any guess is good. All guesses are good. Nobody else? Oh, good. Somebody else guessed. All right. I don't know if I would have gotten this right or not. Okay, the answer is, give y'all a second. Oh, y'all are good. Okay. Gary is the closest. The answer is, according to NPR, one of the first references to cookies for Santa appeared in the 1870s story, the short story called Polly, A Before Christmas Story. So very good, Gary. You won. You got it closest. It was the 1870s. So, hey, it could have been 1876. You never know. You could be exactly right.
It was perfect. When I took pictures of these, I had just made cookies. Like I just baked cookies. So I was like, oh, I'm just going to put these on the actual plate to use for my pictures. So it's perfect. So I made like chocolate chip cookies, but I tried to fancy them up a little bit. So I added like chopped up pretzel and marshmallows to them. So that is the cookie that is.
Oh, that's fun.
They were really good.
Excellent.
All right, we're still waiting for it to dry, but we're getting there. I'm going to go and add another coat on top of the stars that I've got. So I'm just going to do that with the fine liner brush. So this one is 501 blues, and then this one is the blues. What do you call an eyeball that can fly? A real eyesore.
I like that one.
Oh, I like that.
I love it like that.
Those are my kind of jokes.
Mine too. Here, I'll give you another quizzy question, another quiz.
Perfect.
Okay. How many packages does the U.S. Postal Service deliver during the holidays? How many packages does the U.S. Postal Service deliver during the holidays? It's a lot.
Oh gosh, I can't even imagine.
So you can give, the answers include, you can do pieces of mail. We'll just say pieces of mail. That'll be our first guess. So how many pieces?
Like an envelope in the mail?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mail. How many pieces of mail do they deliver during the holidays?
3 billion. Oh my gosh. That is a lot.
Then we'll answer the other question will be how many packages. So we're going to say mail first. All right. Mail pieces, 15 million. No, 15 billion.
Oh, wow.
Marlene, you got it exactly right. There are 15 billion pieces of mail. Okay, and how many packages are delivered between Thanksgiving and New Year's Day by the U.S. Postal Service? I forgot to give you that info earlier, but hey. Thanksgiving and New Year's, that's pretty much the holiday season. We get that.
That is the Super Bowl of package delivering.
I'm seeing so many Christmassy things popping up in stores, and it doesn't bother me at all because it's kind of exciting. You know, I don't feel, it's not like the decorations. It's like I went into a store and they had holiday coffee, you know, just little touches of it to just get you excited about it.
Yeah.
Okay. The answer is 800 million packages between Thanksgiving and New Year's Day.
Oh my gosh.
So there's 15 billion pieces of mail and 800 million packages. That is crazy.
That's crazy. And we think it's hard to get through Christmas season as a paint your own pottery studio.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know about you. My studio did 15 billion pieces a day.
Oh man. I mean, that'd be great for your business bank account, but nothing.
Yeah, but not for your business.
Nothing else about
Vanity,
that.
your kilns.
Especially if it was like the really, really busy Christmas rush and you have to still all those little ornaments.
Yeah.
I would just cry.
Yeah.
I think I saw someone post a while back in either the PYOP peeps group or the CCSA chatter group, but someone said, you know, all throughout the year, everyone's like, why do I have so many little stilts? I can never use these. And then at Christmas season, it's where's all my little stilts?
That's right. Okay, here's another one because we're talking about Christmas trees. How long does it take for a tree to reach the average height for a Christmas tree?
Something like you just don't, I would have never thought of, especially as like a kid.
Yeah, you would just think they show
They're just
up.
there, right? Like I don't know.
Yeah. In our mountains, they have lots of tree farms. It's fun to see. Okay, well, you're all kind of right. So it can take as few as 4 years or as many as 15. The average amount of growing time is 7 years, according to the National Christmas Tree Association.
Of course,
Very
there's
good.
a National Christmas Tree Association.
Of course there is.
Oh my gosh. I think I saw it on Facebook one time, but there's like a company in the UK where you rent a tree, but every year, like it keeps growing throughout the year. Like I couldn't tell you the science about how that works, but they keep this tree in a pot, I guess. And every year you just get the same tree, you rent it, and it just continues to grow. And then once it's retired after so many Christmases, I guess, but they plant it. Like that's crazy to me.
That's like literally very green. I wonder how the lights affect it, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
But there's like I grew up in Ontario, and I'm in Alberta now. Maybe they do something similar, but I used to live near like a Royal Botanical Garden that was kind of like a conservation area, and they would always ask for Christmas trees after the season so that they could help like with dams and stuff in the rivers and stuff. And then here in Calgary, you can donate them to the zoo, and the animals love them. Same with pumpkins.
That's neat.
Yeah, same with the pumpkins, as long as there's no like acrylic paint, or some people put like bleach in them to preserve them or keep critters from eating them. So obviously you can't do that. But yeah, it's kind of cool to see that it goes to use. And then there's another place that I saw, and this I really want to do because it's like the one thing I have on my bucket list as a Canadian is to like have a majestic encounter with a moose, but like a safe encounter.
Right.
Not, you know,
right.
But there's a sanctuary close to Calgary where you could take pumpkins too. And the moose really like to eat pumpkins.
That's really fun.
I think so too. So I would love that. I've seen a baby moose, but I didn't know it was a moose at first. But I would just love to see, you know, a big majestic male with the big antlers, and I would be so happy.
Yeah, that is really cool. We saw one on the side of the road when we were in Norway. That was something.
Oh, wow.
It's so humongous. It's crazy.
They are massive. I've seen moose prints. And I mean, I don't have big feet to begin with, but I put my foot like in its print. It was in like kind of a muddy area. They are massive. All right, I think my tree on the right here is the driest. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add wax resist on top of, let me move it so you can see it a bit better. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paint wax resist all over this tree, which I can still see the black line of it, the outline. So I'm going to paint all the way around that because I'm going to then, when I paint the background, it's not going to paint purple over that pretty tree that I just did.
Yeah, I like that you're layering your wax resist. That's a really cool technique because you have it down.
I mean,
the lines. Yeah,
it repels off of the wax resist that I already have down on that design, which is also something I think I read on the Mayco website, like under the product tag for wax resist. So that was a good thing to know. But it's another thing. It's one thing to read it, and it's another thing to do it and see it.
Yeah. I love that because you could add different colors, you could add different layers. I think it's a great idea.
I think it just adds a little bit more to the project too, because, you know, especially if you have, I mean, kids can paint so fast. So if you have to add different steps in and they have to wait for it to dry, this is a really good project. So we had a lot of school groups come in, and we had some schools that came every year. And I mean, that's not unheard of, but it's just, what can you offer so it's different for them? Because sometimes you would have siblings that would come up in the younger grades and their older sibling had already done the project. So just offering different ways for them to do it so that, you know, parents don't end up with the exact same thing every year is fun. It's fun to come up with too. Plus the one thing that I used to do whenever we offered a project, you know, let's say we were doing this one, we sometimes would have 4 classes come in a day. Well, I don't know who's in which class. So what we would do is we would change up the color palette for it. So we would know, okay, this first class was this color palette. This second class was this one, just to keep it separated and a little bit easier to keep track of. Yeah. Because I would have no idea who is who. They put their names on it, but I don't know a name and a face. So. All right. So I'm just painting wax resist over that. And then I just saw someone, Joanne said, I walked into a young moose on my way home from school when I was 11. Mom was right behind him. Oh gosh, mama moose are scary.
Oh yeah.
Backed up real slow. Grew up in AK.
Wow. Neat.
What's AK?
Alaska.
Thank you. Oh gosh. Grew up in AK and we had a mom have her babies over the years. She even had twins a couple times. Oh my gosh, that's so special. Wow. I would be so happy.
Very cool.
We moved to Alberta from Ontario, and that took us 3 days of driving. And it takes just a day to get out of Ontario, like get through Ontario where we were. And we drove through between like close to Ontario and Winnipeg, Manitoba. It's called it's like, what did they call it? The Moose Highway or something.
Oh.
Didn't see one.
Oh.
Did not see a moose. I was so sad. Okay. So that one's done. This one over here is looking dry too. So I'm going to go and add the wax resist onto that. I mean, just for time's sakes, I might start just painting purple around these trees just so you can get an idea. Because I don't want to keep you around waiting for paint to dry all night. But yeah, this tree here, you can see it bled over that line. Not a problem because we're going to be painting over that with the Stroke and Coat. And Stroke and Coat, even though like that's probably a darker color than the lavender that we're going to be painting as the background, 3 coats will cover that right up. Oh, wait, Joanne said that the mama moose had them in like they were born in the yard. The baby moose. Does Mayco make a mask and peel?
No, I remember that product from years ago, but we do not make one. That was a product that you could paint on and let it dry, and then it was like a mat, like a liquid mask, as opposed to using paper or wax resist, and then you would just peel it off when you were done, like a latex type thing. It was pretty cool.
Would that cause issues for the bisque?
I don't think so. I don't remember it. I didn't use it a whole lot back then. I'm not sure who made that. Maybe it was a Duncan thing. Or it could have been Mayco 100 years ago.
I saw someone on Facebook Marketplace selling like really old gallon jugs of the Christmas tree glazes, but then like right on the front it says contains lead. So
oh, wow. That's old.
I don't know if those are going to sell, but
yeah.
All right. So those two trees on the end have got the wax resist on them. So it's just the middle one that's still a little bit wet that I'm waiting for. I've got my stars around the plate that I added with wax resist. These 2 stars on top of the trees don't have wax resist quite yet because those are still a little bit wet. But obviously you're just kind of waiting for paint to dry. So if you had a studio and you're teaching this as a workshop and you don't want people in your studio all night, like Krista said, if you look on Amazon, you can find those little like desktop or handheld fans that'll help just speed things up, but you don't want to use hot air for that. You just want to use a cold setting on them just to help dry it throughout. Because if you use the hot air, it just kind of dries the top layer, but not underneath. So that's just a helpful way of getting things done a little bit faster. And I found too, when people said they were waiting for things to dry and they'd start talking and it had been dried like 20 minutes ago. So just a nice way to get out of the studio quickly and get home soon. Yeah, I think what's interesting, Krista, because you just said that you had just started to see Christmas stuff popping up.
Yes.
I've said this before, but I just think it's so true because we've already had our Thanksgiving in Canada and we've got Halloween next week. And then it's like right into Christmas season. So I just think for us, we have a longer Christmas lead up, if that makes sense. Like after December 31st, really, it's all like we've already got stores that have already got Christmas stuff out. So we just have more time. I personally wait until after Remembrance Day to start doing stuff like that. Like shopping or decorating or anything. But I mean, we've got really steep roof on our house. So we leave our Christmas lights up year round just so we don't have to go up the ladder every year, but we don't turn them on, but it's always magical when you get to turn them on.
Yeah, for sure.
And we can see, especially during the winter when the trees have shed their leaves, but we can see downtown Calgary and the TELUS Tower they call it like the Northern Lights, but the exterior of the building has like LED lights on it and it like does a northern light. They call it the Northern Lights display. So like the colors change and it looks so beautiful. So it changes like kind of this colors like purples and blues or purples and pinks or green and yellow. It's so beautiful.
How appropriate that you're doing these colors today.
I think so too. And that it snowed.
Right, exactly.
Except for it took like half an hour to get our car cleared off yesterday. We had an existing crack on our windshield, which is now cracked fully across because of the heat and then warming up the window to melt the ice. Yes, the joys of Alberta in winter. Okay, I think my middle tree is looking dry, so I'm going to go ahead and add the wax resist to that one too. And then we are that much closer to finishing up and getting the background color, which is the lavender. One of Mayco's newer stroke and coat colors, which is probably my favorite one. Oh, that's my old wax resist. Well, this is my I grabbed another brush to do my wax resist for on the tree. So I'm not using that really tiny little kind of detail brush, like liner brush. That would take forever.
For sure. I like adding all those colors in there. That's fun.
Yeah, I think it just ties it all together. It just adds a little bit more to it.
Yeah, that's nice.
There we go. Just making sure I got nice straight lines. Okay. I think I'm good. I'm just good. I think the other thing you do, if you tilt your plate a little bit, like you can see if there's spots where you haven't put the wax resist, you can go back and do that. Or some of my edges aren't like super straight, so I can go back and fix that. I could also go back and fix it with my fine kind of liner brush, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. We're done with the wax resist, except for these two stars, which look dry enough. So I'm just going to add that wax resist on top of these stars too while I've got it. And then we are good to go with the lavender.
Yay.
Yay is late. Yeah, it's late for anyone in the Eastern time zone. It's not late here, but it's dark out.
Yes, it's dark here for sure. It's dark so early.
Yes, I know, it's sad. You really know that summer's over when it starts to get really dark out really early.
Sure.
Okay, I'm done with the wax resist. So I'm using a stroking coat for the background, and obviously those come in these bottles, and it's not like the foundation one where you can paint right out of, which I did with this one. So I just have another little dish that I'm going to pour my paint on, because I'm going to use a fan brush again, just so it's faster. And I don't want to use these little paint wells, because the fan brush is wider than those paint wells. So I'm just going to pour it onto my dish, save myself some time so I can do this part a little bit faster. Got another fan brush, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to start on this side because that's the tree I did last. So just make sure it's all dry. It seems so crazy to paint over what you've already done, but then it's really fun to watch the glaze repel off of it.
Yeah.
So I think the reason, because I remember when I was designing this plate and I painted the sample myself, I was trying to think, what's the best way to do this piece so that the wax resist is absolutely necessary? Because one of the things that was going through my head was, why not just to prepare if someone had the question, instead of painting the background all purple and then painting the design on top, like what's the benefit of using the wax resist? And I think the thing is especially if you have beginner painters in your studio, and especially with the watercolor technique, you can just be a little bit looser about it. You don't have to be super worried about messing up the paint underneath if you added your design on top and having the stroke and coat background already done. So having that foundation background, which you then paint your design on and then add the wax resist with, I think it just takes a little bit of pressure off, because if you don't make it look perfect underneath, you can just cover it up with the color on top. So I think that's kind of where this project is really nice, because when you do the watercolor, you don't have to worry about if it stays within the lines, and it's just really pretty. It's a pretty project when it's fired, but you get really nice results and it's really fun to do. So I just think it's just a really fun way to add a new product into your pieces with the wax resist. Because again, I always thought it was something that you could only use for like mid-fire or high fire projects. And it's fun to watch the glaze repel off the wax resist. There we go. So I've got one coat done on the top, on the front. I'll let that dry in between, and then I'll go back and do another. So the one thing that we were talking about too is the wax resist isn't, I mean, it definitely repels, but it's not going to completely come off. So if you have a separate brush, you could do it with a Q-tip with water, a brush with water, you could use a sponge, but you can just go in, you can touch up those lines, like the edges of your trees, and get more glaze to repel off of it as well. But with the design that we're doing with the watercolor, it actually looks really cool when you have extra glaze repelled on top.
Oh yeah, they said this would be fun to sponge on the background for a different look. I like that.
Yeah, sponge. You could do sponges. You could do watercolor, which we did. You could do the shaving cream technique. You could use a silk screen. You could use stamps. There are just so many ways that you could add different kind of designs with different techniques. And what's fun about this too, right? Like I have 3 trees and I was able to do 2 different techniques of them. So fun to do. But sponges are fun too, because I've seen ones where like the sponges are like in the shape of a star or a square or a circle. I don't know. Just different shapes is fun. You can do that. Nothing like a trip to Michael's or Hobby Lobby or somewhere to find fun things to inspire you. I'm just touching up over the places with the wax resist. It's not too bad. There's just a few spots where it's just a bit of paint extra on top that's pooled. All right, so I'll let this coat dry and then I'll just go back in and add 2 more of the lavender with my fan brush. Are there any more trivia questions left for us to finish off with?
Yes. Let's see here. All right. What was the original name of The Night Before Christmas by Clement Clarke Moore? Any guesses, anyone? Well, we have one guess, and the answer is correct. It is A Visit from St. Nicholas. And the notes say, after Moore first wrote the poem, he read it to his children on Christmas Eve, and a friend who was visiting was so impressed that she sent it to a newspaper who published it the next year in 1823. Very nice.
It's cute.
Those are good questions.
Well, we have the journalist who put together the article that included the trivia to thank.
That's right. Here's another one. When were gingerbread houses invented? Ooh, bonus points if you get where they were invented.
Good guesses.
Yeah, we have a guess so far. We have one guess. Okay. Another guess. I think your tree looks so cute. I love this little project. It's so fun. Okay. The answer is Germany. Gary got that right. But it was in the 16th century.
Crazy how long ago.
I know. That's
around.
crazy. Good job, Gary Street.
I started watching a lot of baking shows during the pandemic. And I started watching the Great British Baking Show, which I love. But the earlier version, like the first season of it, which I don't even know what year they filmed it in. But while like the contestants were baking, they almost did like little history lessons on some of the things that they made. So like the 2 hosts would go and travel around and talk to historians about, you know, the process of how cookies were made or how cakes were made during a time where sugar and flour and butter were were things that were easily accessible. So they talked about, you know, different types of cakes that they would make with the ingredients that they had. And it's so cool to hear the history behind it, like who invented it or who started it or how it's evolved since then. But I absolutely love that. They don't do that part of it anymore, but I always loved it. I love a little history lesson.
Definitely. Like how things happened, how things are made, all that.
Yes, just documentaries, I guess is basically what I'm getting.
Yeah. So
I did see, Sorry, I'm just going to go back because I saw someone ask
Yes.
a question about the wax resist. So Joanne said the resist you are using is clear. All the wax I have found is green. Is this a new product from Mayco? So I guess technically, if you look at the bottle that I have, it also looks green, but it does apply clear. So I don't know if that answers your question, Joanne, or if that helps, but this is the wax resist that I'm using in the bottle. It does almost look a little bit tinted with blue or green. But this is the Mayco wax resist that I'm using, and it is a little bit tinted. So if that answers that question, that helps.
This is neat. It says Duncan had a class, an underwater scene, where you paint the foreground and wax it, then each layer behind it was done the same. When you're done, you sponge the background, fire it, and the scene will be revealed. That's cool.
Ooh.
That's a lot to think about.
Yeah, I'm trying to picture how that would work. But I think she said it best. You'd fire it and the scene would be revealed.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, I like that. That's definitely one of those trust the process pieces.
Yeah, you have to think through it.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you do paper painting, you know how you have to do the front part first. I can't remember. I can't even think about it. You work in reverse, basically.
Oh, see, I don't even think I've done that technique before because that's kind of making my brain spin.
Yeah, it makes it hurt a little bit. So I love this. Does anybody have any questions about it?
Yeah, I'm gonna add a second coat while we're chatting. Right. But yeah, if anyone has any questions while we're here, feel free to ask. If you're painting along or you plan on painting, be sure to take a picture of your piece and tag Mayco or I so we can see it. I'd love to see the finished results. I will say, I think my favorite thing about this is the lavender color that we're using. Looks so like it looks like such a cool purpley blue, but once it fires, it's so different.
Oh yeah, wow.
Like it looks like I'm using kind of a more grape color, and that one
sure
turns
does. Yeah.
purpley, but I love it. That's another trust the process color.
There is, yeah, because
something
really looks similar.
Yeah, it's like when I used to have my studio and little boys would ask for red and I'd give it to them and they'd be like, "This is pink." I was like, "No, it's not." So this is the second coat I'm doing. I mean, you all can understand what I'm doing, but once it's done drying the second coat, I'd go back and paint a third. And then I also didn't paint the back of this plate today just for time's sake, but on my original sample that I just had, I painted the back the same color, 3 coats of the lavender. You could do it white with the foundation color that we used, the first color we used, which was the white foundations. You could do that on the back. You could do one of the blues that we use in the design. You could use 501 blues. You could use the blues. You could use Blue Dawn, lavender, or something completely different. Totally up to you. But that part I'm going to leave for today. And yes, you're going to get the full technique sheet for this piece. So you'll get all of the steps for doing it. You're also going to get the template so that you can get these trees transferred onto your piece. And I'm also going to be sending out smaller, the same trees, just smaller size, so that you could do pieces like this if you'd like. These are the exact same trees or just a smaller version. And then you're also going to get the template for the plates as well. So you can do the same process that we did with these trees. You can do it with those plates. So you're going to get all of that from Mayco. There's also images of the pieces, like finished photographs, so that if you are wanting to host a workshop and you haven't got a sample painted yet, you are more than welcome to use the photos from Mayco to advertise your class, or just do it or just add it to your lineup of posts for social media. You are more than welcome to do that. That's what they are there for. I'm just going over it just once more, getting all the glaze off of the spots with the wax resist that hasn't repelled. But I'm going to let this one coat dry, give it a third coat, and then paint the back. And then you just stilt and fire this to cone 06 is what I do. Some kilns are a little bit different. But this would just be a really pretty cookie platter or tray to leave out for Santa. Thank you all so much for joining. I hope that you have enjoyed this and I've explained it all well enough. I have a hard time sometimes getting my thoughts into words. So
yeah, I think it's great. I love that you have the other design with the presents, that it's like they're not the same design, but they look so good together because they have similar colors and a similar theme. It's really fun.
Absolutely. And I think it's just, because this is a process where sometimes you have to wait for things to dry. You could have people that are, maybe they're keen and they want to get more than one thing done. You could certainly have people working on more than one piece at a time. I used to have people that come in and they made, they had 3 kids, so they'd make a piece for each of them. So they would just kind of rotate in between, letting things dry in between. So you could definitely do that. And then you can just add more personal characteristics by picking your own favorite color palette if you'd like. I love going on Mayco's website, and it's a lot of work, but I screenshot all the colors that I'm interested in on my computer, and then I can see them together and I can understand kind of what color palette I want to go for. I mean, when I had my studio, I used to have a display of all the colors that we offered on little tiles. So those were like physical things that I could move around and see what each color looked like with each other. I don't have that liberty anymore, unfortunately. So I just work with it all on my computer. But you could definitely pick so many endless color schemes to work on this project for, and it would be a lot of fun. Oh, and then someone just said, thinking about how to create a Valentine's project with this heart platter with different designs. Awesome. I would love that.
Yeah, me too. This one says, is the background watercolor? The finished one kind of looks thin.
On my platter, yes. Oh, the background color. No. That is 3 coats.
Thinner coats, yeah.
Yeah. I have learned that I'm a thin painter. I think I have fear of paint crawling, that I'm hesitant and nervous of that, but no. Like this one is a little bit more opaque, if that's what you're wondering, but no, this is watercolor. This is just straight lavender.
Very nice. All right.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Krista. And thank you, everyone.
Yeah, this was a fun class. I liked it very much. Thank you guys for coming. And we'll be sending out an email that has, like Lindsay said, all the projects and everything, and then the recording too. We don't have any other classes scheduled just yet, but we are planning another one that Lindsay will be teaching in the spring, I think.
And there's some past projects that we've done with Mayco that are available on their website. Yeah. So that's always good for me to scroll through and see my name pop up.
That's right. And they may actually even be on our YouTube channel. You should check that out. We might have put them on there. I can't remember.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know that. That's cool.
I can't remember. You'll have to check. So cool. All right.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Have a good night.